What's up, guys? We have yet another remake for Witchboard from 1986, and this is directed by Chuck Russell, who directed A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, among other movies. So I'm curious. I watched it. I have a review for you. Let's go. Witchboard stars Madison Iseman, Aaron Dominguez, and is directed by Chuck Russell.
Christian?
What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new 2025 review. I just finished watching Witchboard. I have another movie called Traumatica, which stars Rebecca Kennedy, who is in Two Witches. If you haven't checked out that review and that movie, I suggest doing it. A couple years ago, I reviewed that. Every now and then, you'll find one of these, I guess what you'd call lower budget type movies that don't necessarily get a theatrical run that happen to be quite surprising and even really good. Witchboard, I have not seen the original from 1986. I don't know why. Maybe that's a good thing when you go into a remake, so that way you kind of go into it with just fresh eyes and there's no bias, I guess, because of a maybe nostalgia or love for the original. So yeah, went into this with a blank slate, and let me just say this off the bat. Madison Iseman is our main character, and she has a very striking resemblance to Sydney Sweeney. I'm wondering if that was intentional. I don't know. But yeah, she looks very much like her. And, you know, Sydney Sweeney being like the big it girl these days, you know, the controversy over the American Eagle ad, which, by the way, guys, why that is controversial, that's weird. That's just ridiculous. We've had blue jean ads with attractive women millions of times in the past. Maybe not millions, but it's just weird, okay? That it's the current day and age, all right? And maybe it's not as controversial as social media likes to make it controversial, but that's for another whole story or video. Now let's get into this review for Witchboard. Chuck Russell freaking directed this thing. I was very curious just based off of that. I have such a love for Dream Warriors. I think that it's hard to say, but it might be the best movie, at least the best directed, the best reception-wise movie of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We're kind of in a Nightmare on Elm Street love fest lately with the announcement of the 4K box set that is coming out. I paid way too much for mine, but I did pre-order it. I got the UK edition. Let me know down in the comments if you got it or not. So first off, let's jump into a quick plot synopsis. Our main character, like I stated earlier, is Emily. Her boyfriend, by the name of Christian, is opening up his own restaurant. It's a Creole-based style restaurant. I'm guessing this takes place in New Orleans. I don't remember it stating New Orleans, but it looks like New Orleans, although it probably was on a backlot. The origins of this story take place in the very late 1600s, where there was this witch, and she was hunted by the community back then. And so she cast this spell, and there's this Witchboard. And so jumping forth to the present day, there's this bank heist at the beginning. Deaths happen, Witchboard ends up in the woods somewhere, and then eventually it ends up in our main character Emily's hands. I do like that this movie tried to do a little bit of character development, especially with Emily, who happens to be a recent drug addict. And so when you're dealing with a drug addict, you know, think of like the Evil Dead remake, right? With Mia in that movie. And I think when you're dealing with drug addicts, you can't trust what they're saying just because of their past and what drug addicts will do, lie to get drugs, right? But this seems to be some new source of addiction for her, this board. Once she starts playing with it and unlocks it, then all of this crazy stuff comes about. Initially, some good things happen in her life, but then her boyfriend, Christian, quickly realizes that maybe there's some bad juju going on with this Witchboard, and so he tries to pull it away from her. One of my biggest complaints about this movie is a very simple plot point. Almost immediately, once she gets this board, he's concerned about it. He's concerned about her past. So what would any normal human being do? They would get that board and they would throw it out the window. They'd take it to the dumpster. They would burn it. They would do whatever. But no, he doesn't do that. He leaves it with her and goes with his ex-girlfriend to figure out how to solve this issue. A lot of red flags up in that scenario. And of course, throughout the movie, it just gets worse and worse and worse for her because she is left with the freaking board. I get that we got to do something to keep the story moving forward, but you got to at least not do lazy writing, okay? You got to come up with a different angle, something that causes that board to constantly come back into her life, which could have, this is a supernatural type of thing. So I think what they should have done is have him take the board and try to get rid of it, and somehow it ends up back in her life. But no, we just bypass that and we ask the audience to be really dumb. Now, before I talk more bad stuff about this movie, let me just tell you there are some cool attributes about it. I think this story is interesting, and I think if this would have gotten in the hands of maybe a bigger studio with a bigger budget, I hate to knock Chuck Russell, but I don't think it's a very well-directed movie as well. The CGI is quite horrible, and I know we like to cut some slack to lower budget movies for CGI, but I just can't. If you can't make it look real, then get rid of it and try a different approach. Or just ask the audience to use their imagination. You don't always have to show it. Sometimes I think it'd be better to not show it if you don't have the budget to make it look real, and just ask the audience to somehow put the pieces together. There have been so many movies that have done this that needed some sort of effect. More times than not, movies make the mistake, or lower budget movies, and hell, sometimes even bigger budget movies, make the mistake of using CGI that looks absolutely atrocious. And that's what this movie does. But there's a moment in the third act when they kind of combine the old with the new. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say the original witch from the late 1600s has a more prevalent part in the story. And I think that was interesting stuff. But unfortunately, the entire movie is plagued with bad CGI, the fact that it is low budget, and there's not enough in the way of creativity to bypass that and make the audience not really think about that stuff. That's the problem with this movie. It looks like one of those CINEMAX movies from like the 90s without the nudity. They do try to get a little sexy here and there in this movie, but they don't really want to show anything, right? I don't know if it's because of the contracts with the actors and whatnot, but back in the 90s, they weren't scared to show anything. This one has next to no nudity, and believe me, that is the least of this movie's problems, okay? That's just me comparing it to what CINEMAX would put out like in the 90s. This movie looks like softcore porn quality. And if you remember, I did like the Wrong Turn movies, and that sixth movie definitely has that quality about it, but it backs it up with like, I think 5 or 6 actual sex scenes or nudity or whatever, whereas this one doesn't do that. Now, and that's not a complaint that this movie doesn't do that, but I'm just stating it feels like that type of movie. I do have to commend the acting here as well, though, because I do think the acting's not bad. There's no real bad acting. It's just a really cheesy story that's going on. It's not a well enough developed script. I think the whole overall premise and the idea of the movie is interesting, and I haven't seen the original. I'm assuming that they probably used a lot of different story beats that the original does. I don't think it's like amazing story-wise or premise-wise, but I do think it could have been a lot better had the story gotten a few more maybe passes, really just a bigger budget. Sometimes you need a bigger budget for a certain type of movie. There's a lot going on in a story like this. This is a beefy type of story with, part of it being a period piece from like the late 1600s. And if you don't have the budget to make that stuff look convincing, look real, then it's going to come off as bad. I think the movie's just too bright looking as well. When you're doing a movie like this and you're trying to get away in the way of effects, then I think sometimes maybe going a little darker in the way of cinematography can benefit the movie. I don't always like that, but in this case, I think it would have worked better. Also, I must mention the main villain of the movie, Jamie Campbell Bower, who is actually in Stranger Things Season 4. Very good actor, but he's pretty much playing a one-dimensional type of character here. These are actors collecting a check, okay? This is nothing new. They would probably tell you that, a year down the road after the promotion cycle for this movie is over. This is collecting a check. That's what this is. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's a shame that Chuck Russell is directing this because I love Chuck Russell. I love The Mask. I love Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. He made one of the greatest, not just Nightmare, but just franchise sequels, horror-wise, ever. So, unfortunately, I got to give this movie a 2 hours loss. It's just really bad. It's not one that I'll ever want to watch again. But maybe you guys will find some sort of enjoyment out of it, Witchboard. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Witchboard. Have you seen the original? Let me know as well. Is it worth checking out? Maybe I'll check it out. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do few of our Fridays. Follow my Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Become a channel member. Buy me a coffee. And you guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and Drumdum out.